Hello and welcome along to the Weather Studio Live. I'm Alex Deakin.
I'm Aidan McGivern. We're broadcasting live from the Met Office. It's 1 o'clock, it's Tuesday. We're here every week broadcasting on the Met Office social media channels. Pleased you could join us. Next to me, Claire. What are you up to today, Claire?
I'm taking your comments and questions this afternoon, so please keep them rolling in. Lots to talk about today, including climate stuff. Please illuminate us.
Yes, coming up in today's programme, we are talking climate, high-resolution climate as well. We're also talking about the cracking weather across the UK at the moment. If you like sunshine, there is lots of that on offer throughout this week thanks to high pressure. How long will it last? When will it change? Is there a bit of uncertainty in the forecast? And part of that, a little bit, is to do with something going on in the tropics. We'll also be looking at Hurricane Humberto. But first, before you press the button, a word of warning. The video does contain some flash meteorology.
Not flash photography, but flashes of lightning. Lots of lightning coming up in the next clip. And this was in Menorca last week. You may have seen some images and movies in the last week or so on social media of the incredible thunderstorms that we saw over a period of days across, first of all, the Balearics. This was Menorca. And then across southeast Spain, and then across central parts of Spain. Just huge thunderstorms. I mean, fascinating from a meteorological point of view, the tremendous lightning, the power of the atmosphere. There were also waterspouts, tornadoes, huge hailstones, and flash flooding. More on that in a moment, but I just wanted to show you another lightning picture. This one, just a single bolt, just huge impression there on the water.
It's incredible, actually, isn't it? If you can, look this one up on Twitter because it really is amazing. And put the sound on as well because you get the real, you get the real boom from it as well. It is absolutely incredible, that image. So yeah, do try and find that one on Twitter, on social media. Absolutely incredible lightning
so
strike
powerful
over the water there.
That person was in the right place at the right time with their video camera. And this was just one day. This was one day.
Wow.
The huge amount of tens of thousands of lightning strikes that occurred over the Balearics into southeast Spain. Later on into the weekend, we also saw a lot of lightning activity across central parts of Spain.
Every tiny little cross is a lightning strike, and just incredible amounts. And that's just one day from last week, and a lot of heavy rain. Caused serious flooding as well.
It was reported by the media in Spain as something called gota fria, which is actually an archaic meteorological term, essentially referring to what we'd call a cut-off low in the upper atmosphere. What do I mean by that?
Gota fria.
Gota fria.
Fria means cold, right?
Yeah, so it means
Spanish
cold
GCSE
drop.
coming. Cold drop. Gota fria.
Gota, I guess, is drop, cold drop. There you go. It's a cold upper low in the atmosphere. And we talked about it a bit last week about how the jet stream was moving and cutting off, and we were going to see this upper low over the Iberian Peninsula. Let me just show you what happened. So we started off with the jet stream coming across the Atlantic. I'll just put a thicker pen on there.
Speed. Here you go.
Let's
start again.
Okay, here we go.
Tony Hart.
All right. We saw initially the jet stream coming across the Atlantic and then diving south like that at first last week. Then it cut off. Here we go. It cut off. And so one portion went like that, and then over the Iberian.
Whoa! What have you
That's what's
done,
called
Aidan?
a gota fria.
That is That's
a cold
amazing.
drop.
See what a cold drop does. It absolutely plays with the graphics. That's incredible. Claire, have you got any questions?
Yes, we have,
just to cut to you for no other reason, obviously. But I'm really interested in some questions.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, somebody was in Spain and saw all those huge sort of deep depressions happening across Spain last week. Nigel Walter. Hello, yes, he said it was very scary indeed. It's the Sheffield 10K this Sunday. Is the weather going to be fine? Well, currently there is a weather system moving in. There's a lot to play for now. The boys will talk more about that. But things are changing through the weekend. But certainly it is going to be warm. Some lovely weather towards the beginning of the weekend. We'll see how it pans out. And Norfolk Broads, Nigel Clifford is going to Norfolk Broads on Saturday afternoon. Is it going to be nice enough to take the boat out? Yes, it will be. It's looking like a fine day there. Temperatures into the 20s, just a light breeze. And cold front, question mark, cold front moving down across high pressure. How can that be? Well, it can be. It just dampens activity, so you don't get a lot of uplift, you don't get a lot of real potency in the system. And we did see that cold front move down through the week, introducing more cloud, a little bit of rain, and that was about it, really. So yes, high pressure tends to ease and sort of dampen down the activity.
Kind of wrings it out.
There's like air pushing downwards, so you don't get that uplift and that ascent, which causes those big systems. Are we back?
I think we might be back.
Okay.
I think we might be back.
Shall I slowly but surely try and draw a
I think we're done with the drawing. I think a go to Freer, people can look it up. But this is the result of a go to Freer. This is the flooding in, where was this? This was in...
This is a place in Murcia called Ontinyent, I think, a river.
Pronunciation.
I didn't do Spanish GCSE. Better at my French and German.
Nice. You see, well.
Okay, so the rainfall amounts that we saw in this region, one weather station in Murcia received 32 millimetres of rainfall in 10 minutes. More than 3 centimetres of rain in 10 minutes.
That's amazing.
And that's, of course, what leads to this flash flooding. And in 24 hours, the same weather station saw 320 millimetres. That's more than a foot of rainfall,
and
in 24 hours, and that's more than a year's worth of rainfall.
The average is around 300 millimetres
in this area.
In Murcia, so it's basically a year's worth of rainfall.
So flash flooding. This is near Malaga as well. Just devastating flooding, going through these narrow streets, picking up all the cars and vans. And this one here near Madrid, similar scenes, really muddy water, just absolutely cascading through the streets.
Yeah. Thankfully, the weather's improved a little bit across Spain recently, and it is a little bit drier there, but there could be some more heavy showers heading back, particularly to more western parts of Iberia, into the weekend. Do keep your questions coming in on the weather globally, climate issues as well, but the weather forecast for the weekend, anything weather related, do keep sending your questions in. Even if you're not watching this live, you can keep sending in questions, and we'll try and answer in future programs, or anything weather related that you'd like us to discuss. But now we are going to bring in our guest.
Waiting patiently.
Waiting very patiently.
Looking quite bemused at all the technical problems.
Our technical problems. But welcome along, Dr. Elizabeth Kendon. Thank you for coming along today. Whenever we get new guests on, we like them to describe their role here at the Met Office. So just briefly describe what you do here on a day-to-day basis. What's your job?
So I'm a climate scientist here at the Met Office Hadley Centre. I lead a small team of people where we're trying to carry out climate projections at very, very fine spatial scales, using the latest supercomputing facilities that we have here and cutting-edge models. So yes, it's a very exciting area to be working in.
Absolutely fascinating. And you're really here today because yesterday there was a big launch of a new report where climate kind of went to the next level, almost, certainly across the UK.
Yeah, so we've made a really big step forward here. So for the first time ever, we've been able to carry out national climate scenarios at a resolution that we more typically use for weather forecasting. So we used actually a 2.2 kilometre grid box, whereas more traditionally climate models have a 100 kilometre, 60 kilometre grid boxes. We're right down to really local scales now, and allowing us to look at future changes in. So for example, you were talking about flash flood here, flash flooding for the UK, temperature extremes, really local scale.
Absolutely fascinating, really detailed stuff.
These are based on climate projections that were done last year, aren't they?
So it's building on projections that we released last year. So there we were looking at sort of broad scale patterns of climate change, new probabilistic information about the likelihood of changes in the future. And the key message there was warmer, wetter winters and hotter, drier summers for the UK with climate change. And that key message isn't changing here, but we're now providing much greater local detail.
Okay, and we're doing that by changing the model resolution, aren't we?
That's right. So previously, we released projections at the 60 kilometre scale here. You can see this is what the UK looks like in a series of 60 kilometre grid boxes. Pretty blocky.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also released some regional projections at 12 kilometre. And now for the first time, you can see here the much higher definition of the UK when it's now divided up into lots of tiny grid boxes of 2.2 kilometre grid across, which you can't actually hardly visualise there, I think.
Yeah.
So we've basically now running at much higher resolution, so we can look in much more detail at processes in the atmosphere. So, for example, convection, thunderstorms, that lightning, these sort of processes we can now capture with much greater resolution.
Let's look at rainfall then. You can see a comparison here, can't you?
So this is just one example where you can see, so here on the left-hand side, this is the kind of more traditional climate model that we would use. And what they tend to do is have too much widespread light rain. They're not really able to capture the local intensity of rainfall and the really intense showers we might get in summertime. Whereas on the right-hand side here, you can see these new local projections. They're so much more realistic.
Looks much more like a radar.
It looks much
would.
more like a radar would, and the sort of the images people are familiar with from weather forecasting. And so that gives us the credibility for the first time really to look at how these events change moving into the future. So we've been looking at changes for 2070s under a high emissions of greenhouse gases scenario, so that we can start to give people ideas of what they might expect in the future. So for example, we looked at exceeding 30 millimetres an hour. So that's traditionally the threshold used to give warnings about flash flooding. Now and in the future, we expect the frequency of those events to approximately double. So that's a big change we're talking about.
So that's one of the key. Let's take a look at some of the results actually that we're expecting. So we're talking. This is the temperature. So you're also able to really nail down temperature to a more finer degree as well.
That's right. So what we can now represent much better is the influence of mountains, coastlines. So we're talking about snow at high elevation. We're talking about sea breezes, and we're also able to really look at the urban environment in detail. So the urban environment is really important because it kind of exacerbates heat exposure to people in the future. And now we're at a resolution where we can really capture the effect of cities, and we see higher temperature extremes, and so we can start to look at the potential, for example, for exceeding thresholds of 40 degrees C or something moving forward into the future.
So temperature results then of this high resolution model.
Yeah.
You're basically increasing the temperature of hot summer days, aren't you, by a considerable amount? So the range that these models suggest, so we have actually a number of projections here, not just one, so we can start to give sort of ranges of uncertainty. So for hot summer days, we're talking about 3.7 to 6.8. So that's quite a big.
This is by 2070. So in 50 years' time.
Yeah, 50 years' time, an increase of more than
a typical hot summer day will be somewhere between 3.7 and 6.8 degrees warmer than
it.
The maximum temperature will be that much higher.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then another thing that we've looked at is hot spells. So in terms of public health, what we talk about is exceeding 30 degrees C for 2 or more days, and we find that those sort of spells are actually increasing 16-fold by the 2070s.
Wow.
So that's a huge change.
16 times more likely to get 2 days across the south of 30 degrees.
This is for the south of the UK, where these sort of events are largely confined at the moment, but we're expecting big increases in the future.
And that's the temperature at which it can get really uncomfortable for people. Getting serious health issues with those kind of temperatures for more than 2 days in a row. That's amazing. And the rainfall stats were also really quite remarkable.
Yeah, so the rainfall, so here we're looking at in this case, we're looking at hourly rainfall. So up till now, traditionally climate models have told us about broad-scale climate patterns, mean changes. Now we're really looking at how rainfall will change on an hour-by-hour basis, so the weather characteristics of weather that people experience. So for a 1 in 2 year event, that increases about 25% by the 2070s. I already said for something like more extreme, like a flash flood, we're talking about a doubling in frequency by the end of the century.
That's incredible. Yeah. So just phenomenal increases there. And these are some of the projections at the local scale. Why is this research important? Why do you feel it's so important?
So we're really here trying to provide information that's useful to people who are planning and making decisions on the local scale. So it's really bringing climate change information all the way from global all the way to the local scale, which is what people need when they're trying to make decisions. So for example, people looking at urban drainage design, we're now providing hourly data, which is what's really important for them to understand future changes in flood risk. For people who are interested in designing key infrastructure like buildings, bridges, dams, to be resilient to climate change, then we're now providing this local data on temperature extremes.
So all those the stats that we talked about were for 2070, but you can pull out the stats for any. So no one's planning drainage for 2070 yet, but people will be for 5 years' time, and you can get that information out from the data.
Yes, so the data is being released, so it's available publicly. So there's data both for near sort of 2070s horizon, but also a nearer term planning horizon. So there's data available that people can extract and look at and use that information as appropriate for their particular need.
These high resolution climate projections into the future, they're not an easy thing to do, are they? How long does it take the supercomputer to do this?
So this took the supercomputer a year of processing.
Wow.
So that's a huge investment. Yes, that's right. And we've only
run the.
Yes,
wow.
That's correct. So it's taken us a long time to do these 20-year simulations in each of the different time periods. Have taken a year of super.
Can you check it sort of halfway through that you haven't done something wrong at the start?
Yeah,
that would be a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah. So of course we're receiving output all the way through that period, and we're checking everything's fine.
But it takes a year to run the whole cycle.
That's right. Wow. And it's only really now that we've got these big supercomputers that we can do this at all. Yes.
That is amazing computer power. Phenomenal. Any other questions coming in, Claire, about the climate?
Yes, there's a few questions which actually have been answered very nicely by Lizzie, particularly about how our weather's going to change or evolve with climate change. And one particular thing you were talking about there is the flooding issues and also the frequency of heat waves. So that's quite interesting. They also talk about the polar vortex. People are talking about that. Obviously that doesn't have anything really to do with climate change, but we're talking about climate per se. So we'll talk about that more so in a moment. So yes, they're talking about our lifetime as well. So in the next 20 years or so, depending on how old you are. So with this generation rather than perhaps you know, our kids' kids. So it's really interesting how, you know, this sort of high-res model has really got impacts in planning for our future as we retire, boys.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks very much, Claire. Lizzie, thank you very much for joining us today. That's absolutely fascinating.
Okay.
Thank you for being on the programme today. It's superb. Excellent stuff. Do please keep your questions coming in about climate or about anything else relating to weather, and we'll try and have as many answers as we can, as I say, during this programme or during the next. Let's take a look at the weather over the next few days, because it's dominated by high pressure, a big fat area of high pressure, keeping things mostly fine and sunny.
There it is. This is 1 o'clock Tuesday. High pressure centred over Ireland there, and very little else going on. You can see a warm front heading its way towards the north of Scotland, so not everywhere will be settled and sunny. In fact, overnight there'll be some rain arriving into the north of Scotland, some extra cloud here. Further south, that's where we have the clear skies and actually temperatures falling away. A few mist and fog patches forming.
Almost at the equinox, so the nights are getting longer and longer, and in a week or so's time they'll be longer than the days. So that's allowing the temperatures at night to fall away. So it will be quite a chilly night tonight. A touch of frost is just about possible, even as far south as East Anglia. We're surprised in some of the sheltered spots. We could get a few pockets of frost, and also this time of year it turns a bit mistier as well. Not a major issue tonight because the air is quite dry and quite cold, but certainly later in the week it is the season.
Mists and mellow fruitfulness. Now the rain eventually clears away from the north of Scotland during tomorrow, and then sunshine for many, and another nice warm day if you like that sort of thing.
Chilly mornings, warm afternoons, and it gets a bit warmer later this week.
It does.
And that's all to do with just a really subtle shift in the
Let's
high.
put the jet stream on.
Ah, yes.
And you can see the jet stream, a big turn to the north of the UK over the next few days. And
it looks like an omega block.
It does, yeah, well spotted. In fact, if we put on the high pressure,
there you go.
It looks even more like an omega block. So the jet stream is coming in from the west, but it then heads to the north of the UK. One branch goes to the south of Spain, and we've got high pressure in the middle, a blocking high that doesn't go anywhere very fast, but it does edge ever so slightly because this jet stream is pushing it slightly east, and as a result we're going to draw up warmer air from the continent by the end of the week.
So these are the surface winds. As the high shifts that way, the surface winds just drawing it, tapping in some warmer air across France and Spain. So temperatures will be back up. So we're talking 20 degrees really today, maybe 21, and tomorrow maybe 21 across parts of the south. But mostly it's around about bang on average for the next couple of days. Chilly mornings, fine afternoons, and then by the time we get to Friday and possibly Saturday as well, we could be looking at temperatures back into the mid-20s across parts of the south. So similar to last weekend. We got 27.
Virtually everywhere will be cloud-free by this stage. You can see the cloud being pushed north as the warmer air arrives from the continent.
Quite a big change actually in northern Scotland from the rain on Wednesday with the southerly winds. Actually, northern Scotland,
bit of a Föhn effect.
Shelter, bit of a Föhn effect. Will be
the wind warming up over the high ground.
Big jump in temperatures.
And then it sticks around for
the big question
start of the weekend. If you're up early enough on Saturday, yeah, it looks likely that it will continue, but changes
question marks
are on the way.
How quickly that is coming in, and that weather front. That is a weather front out to the west, and that's a question mark, isn't it? I think the southerly winds continue into the weekend. First part of the weekend look fine and sunny, but how quickly that cold front comes in, how it develops and actually turns into possibly an area of low pressure, that's the big area of question mark, big area of uncertainty about the weekend.
You can see how messy the jet stream is by this stage out to the west. Actually, it gets quite complicated. And it's always tricky for the computer models to predict exactly how these blocking highs break down and allow the Atlantic weather to rush back in. So it's more a case of when rather than if. It will turn more unsettled through the weekend.
All the computer models are in agreement that by Sunday it will be a different feel out there. It'll be windier and it'll probably be a bit wetter as well after what has been a very dry week. But there's question marks about exactly when and exactly how and exactly which of these low pressure takes hold and where the rainfall is. We'll have more on it in the 10-day trend tomorrow, which will be available on YouTube.
Any questions?
Quite a nice question actually, quite an interesting one from Gavin Wilcox. What weather influences autumn colours? Well, I think we've got pretty much a perfect setup really at
this
the
week.
moment for autumn colours. So you want a good growing season, you want a lot of moisture in the soil, but also some sunshine. Not too much sunshine, not too much dry weather because it does dry out the leaves. And then through autumn time, you want some cool nights but not frosty nights and some warm, dry days with some sunshine, which allows the chlorophyll to be blocked by another layer above the leaf, allowing the beautiful colours of the oranges, reds, ambers, siennas, etc. to come through. So please send in your autumnal photos and we'll try and maybe highlight some of those next week after we've had that lovely week of high pressure this week. Obviously things could change next week. We don't want too much strong winds because they do blow off the leaves off the trees. But yeah, currently, go outside, take a pic, let us know what you think.
That's fascinating, Claire.
Is that all from the top of your head?
Yeah.
Yeah, thought it was.
She knows her leaves.
Can I just throw this question into the mix?
Oh yeah,
hang on. Somebody from the southwest of Ireland, thank you very much for watching. Let me just find this one because it's quite interesting. And he's saying, how long have we got high pressure for? That's Western Ireland, because obviously he's much more on the phone line for winds and weather systems coming in from the Atlantic. I can't find his name right now, but maybe you could
my
answer
namesake,
that.
Aidan Loftus.
That's it, Aidan Loftus. Hello and welcome. So what do you reckon here? What do you reckon there?
I think by Friday he could be struggling. I mean, the winds will be picking up,
Yeah.
and then that front comes into the southwest of Ireland, probably starting to fringe in by Friday. But
Yeah, you can see
high
the
pressure.
You can see the
2
front
more
there,
days for
early
Aidan.
Saturday.
2 more days, but then by Friday it's all changed. So the interesting thing about the leaves, just to go back to the leaves, it's not about the weather currently. It's about the whole season. It's about how since the growing season from spring through summer has been.
Well, you want chlorophyll during the summer. That allows the greens to be really enriched. And the other colours are always there, but as the chlorophyll sort of dies away, then the other colours can be exposed.
That's interesting. You should do this on the Weather Snap.
I learned this from Graham Madge last year.
Oh, Graham Madge.
It's very good.
Yes, we'll get him back.
Madge's maple.
Yeah.
Do send us your photos. Hashtag Love UK Weather is a good way to send us your photos on Twitter. We do love using them. We'll try and, it's a good shout. Maybe do a gallery next week. And speaking of next week, how's the weather looking for next week?
Well, it's looking very different to this week. Perhaps not so favourable for those autumn colours because it is expected to turn much more changeable, as I mentioned, through the weekend. However, we talked about Hurricane Humberto a moment ago. Now let's just rewind the clock to the present time and we can see Humberto. Woo, there we go. There's Humberto, a hurricane that is expected to move its way northeastwards and head towards Bermuda.
It's a category 1 at the moment, verging on 2.
It's the latest satellite image.
It brought some problems to the Bahamas, of course. It wasn't as powerful as Dorian, but it did move over that area as it was developing into a hurricane, and now it's heading up towards the Bahamas.
Yeah. and this is the official track from the National Hurricane
Sorry, it's heading up
Centre.
towards Bermuda, I should say, yes.
Actually,
So there's
Bermuda is
there,
right on the edge of the forecast track, but it's worth saying that 1 in 3, on average, 1 in 3 hurricanes deviate from this forecast track. The forecast track captures 2 in 3 hurricanes tracks. So yeah, Bermuda just on the edge of that. So certainly something to watch over the next few days. Well, in fact, it's tomorrow night that it's expected to be close to.
And there's an M there, which is a little more worrying because that means it's becoming a major hurricane, which means it's likely to intensify. It's expected to intensify to a Category 3 just as it approaches. Bermuda's infrastructure, though, they're pretty resilient in Bermuda compared to the Bahamas. Obviously, they do get hit by quite a few, often weak hurricanes in Bermuda. And I remember one a couple of years ago, they were almost a direct hit, but it didn't cause any fatalities. It did some damage, obviously, and caused some flooding. But they're pretty resilient in Bermuda. But obviously, a major hurricane getting that close is a cause for concern.
Yeah, so something to watch out for over the next 24 hours, see how that track develops and see if Bermuda remains in the risk area. Following that, this dotted track area, that's days 4 to 5, so we're looking at the weekend by that stage. However, I mean, this plume doesn't quite do justice to the huge uncertainty by that stage of exactly where Humberto is likely to go. What looks likely is that heading through the next few days, it will head towards the mid-Atlantic, and I've got the jet stream on there. Let's zoom out a little bit. So I've got the jet stream on there, and it's always a little bit uncertain when these very small but intense features known as hurricanes get swept up in the jet stream, because very slight changes in the position as they enter the jet stream can make huge downstream differences in their direction and their flow. But it looks likely that Humberto will be swept up into the westerly airflow of the Atlantic and head towards northern Europe. By that stage, just an area of low pressure expected around the early part of next week as this area of low pressure, but whether it heads towards Iceland or whether it heads towards Spain, that's the kind of divergence of tracks.
Yeah, there's a lot of complications. There's the blocking high, which the computer models don't necessarily handle, as you talked about, breaking down anyway. There's a trough disruption here generating these two low pressures which could split, and then you've got that high energy system adding to the confusion, adding to the complexities, as you like. So yes, it is expected to track northwards. It may get engaged with the jet stream, but at the moment it will turn subtropical over the weekend, it's expected to, and then it may influence the UK in some form as an area of low pressure next week. Nothing too unusual about that, but again, it'll be interesting to see exactly how it plays out.
Yeah, but in a word, next week will be unsettled. Whatever Humberto does, wherever Humberto ends up, we can expect a bit more wind, a bit more rain,
a bit more. Yeah, looking at the beautiful blue skies out there at the moment. It'll be all change. Any more questions, Claire? Coming in?
Actually, Daniel Craig on Facebook has asked.
Daniel Craig.
I know, he watches every week, actually.
I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond.
Very good.
An interesting question which crops up every year is, during the Atlantic hurricane season, have there ever been any that have reached the UK? Well, some, as we've just seen there, do track our way, obviously modified by the cooler waters of the North Atlantic, so they become extratropical and then pretty much just get sucked into our type of system, which is deep depressions, mid-Atlantic deep depressions. However, we have come close through the years. Hurricane Ophelia.
Ophelia was the closest one I can ever recall.
Hurricane Charlie.
Yeah, it was
a couple of years ago as well. So it can
that was
happen.
Was that the one 1986 August Bank Holiday washout weekend?
There you go.
Is that the Charlie you're thinking of?
The magic of these mobile devices here. So yes, watch this space for Hurricane.
He knew that. Aidan just knew that. He does know.
Another interesting question, which is maybe one for another time, is it's from Pile on Periscope. And they ask, what influences water vapour in the atmosphere? Well, water vapour is one of the states of water. We have liquid form, which is water and ice, all part of the water cycle. We have a finite amount of water on this planet, which gets recycled, and it's the most abundant greenhouse gas. It does vary in volume, depending whether the air is drier or warmer, depending on air masses, where the air masses are coming from. So if you get an air mass coming from the ocean, it does pick up a lot more moisture. And obviously the air temperature is key to that, whether you live over land or sea. So lots of different factors, but yes, there's always water vapour in the atmosphere. A lot of water vapour does encourage clouds to form as well, with air rising and some solar radiation. So maybe something for another day.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much for that, Claire. Thank you for sending in your questions. Thank you for watching. If you like it, give us the thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channels, tell your friends, get them to watch as well. And if you've got any other ideas, anything you want us to discuss on the programme, don't just have to be questions about the weather specifically this week. Any other bigger issues, bigger meteorological issues, just put them in the comments below. Let us know and we'll try and deal with them either on the show or make an explainer video for you.
Matty B Facebook talks about sunspots. We get questions about sunspots, solar activity every week, so I think we should probably cover that at some point soon. And
one of our space weather experts from upstairs on. But yes, keep all those suggestions, requests coming in. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and it's goodbye.